The news of an Australian couple being detained in Iran this week has put tensions between Iran and other nations in the spotlight. It comes at a time of increased uncertainty with the collapse of the Iran deal and the issues surrounding the Hormuz Strait. Behnam Ben Taleblu is a senior fellow at the Washington-based think tank, the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. He's a guest of the Australia, Israel and Jewish Affairs Council, and he joins me now from our Sydney studio. Now, Behnam, what do you believe was the motivation behind detaining these three Australians in Iran?
Well, lovely to be with you, and thanks for having me. Most unfortunately, there's a 40-year track record, almost as old as the Islamic Republic itself, for taking foreign hostages and abusing dual nationals, hyphenated nationals. So part of it is the way the regime looks at foreign travelers, looks at them as foreign agents, most unfortunately. With the case of the more recent arrests from about 10 weeks ago, the travel bloggers, who Australian media have identified, by the way, it was reported that they were flying a drone somewhere near the capital, but of course, in my view, Iran overreacted in response to the flying of what was likely a commercially purchasable drone and has arrested them.
So do you think they were targeted because of their nationalities?
I think that the fact that they were foreign nationals was a very, very, very significant factor in the Islamic Republic's decision to basically engage in formalized hostage-taking, yes.
What do we know about the conditions of the jail in which they're being detained?
That's an excellent question, because it's reported that at least one of them is in this prison called Evin prison. That's really Iran's most notorious prison. It's home to many political prisoners, really for over 70 years now. That prison has housed political prisoners of various different political stripes under different regimes, under different systems. There's a solitary confinement center there, but most unfortunately that prison is infamous in Iranian history.
And what discussions might be going on between the Australian and Iranian governments at the moment?
I can't speak to the exact nature of the discussions. The Australian media has reported that the Australian government, particularly the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, is interested and is working diligently. But nonetheless, my 2 cents here would be to say that prudence dictates that the Hippocratic Oath should be first and foremost, which is first, do no harm. It would be a grave mistake for the Australian government to zealously work to try to get out the hostages, the prisoners, and thus underwrite future hostage-taking or future prisoner-taking efforts. So with a state sponsor of terrorism like the Islamic Republic of Iran remaining firm, remaining resolute, and negating the arguments that the regime will present, whether through their law enforcement forces or through their judiciary, is going to be key moving ahead. It would also be wise for the Australian government to démarche the Iranian authorities, as well as figure out exactly what was the issue with the drone.
Well, Behnam, what factors do you think are weakening Australia's ability or position to negotiate with Iran on behalf of its Australian citizens?
It depends. Some of it could be political factors, bilateral factors in the relationship, of course, despite the current government doing a review of this larger agreement, the JCPOA, that's the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action 2015 nuclear deal between Iran and key members of the international community. Australia, like much of America's transatlantic partners, remains committed to the deal, has waived some of its unilateral sanctions, although Australia was never formally a part of it. And I think there may be a bit of hesitancy, if I may infer, on behalf of the Australian government, that pushing too hard, pushing too much, publicizing too much would rupture their relationship with the Islamic Republic. After all, Australia is a Western country that does have an embassy in Tehran. Washington cannot claim this, for instance.
What approach should Canberra take in trying to help secure the release of these detainees?
I think they should push for the Iranian government to put the narrative that they have within the country about the reason for the arrest, the exact law that it may have transgressed, into the public spotlight, and have the court of public opinion also press the Islamic Republic. I think that when you look at the issue in isolation, it may not make much sense to do this. But then if you look at the broader history of how the Islamic Republic has treated these foreign nationals, dual nationals, foreign travelers, who they take on often trumped-up charges, then you begin to see a pattern. And raising that pattern in the court of public opinion, in international institutions, would aid Canberra significantly.
How do you think Iran is viewing the firing of the US National Security Advisor, John Bolton?
Well, there's been reports in the Iranian press that this would not incentivize them to come to the table. But more broadly, what Iran is looking for is action as opposed to rhetoric or bureaucratic minutiae or a shuffling of the chairs of power in Washington. The Islamic Republic's intransigence right now is based on eliciting sanctions relief. And I think the Islamic Republic wants the pace of American sanctions to slow first, something that is actually being ramped up, and wants current sanctions to be not enforced, something that currently is happening, and ultimately is angling for some sort of waiver, some sort of financial lifeline to outlast the max pressure campaign and thus outlast the Trump administration.
And just finally, what about speculation that Mike Pompeo might take over the role? Would Tehran be pleased with that?
You know, Kremlinology is not my strong suit, so it's best I don't speculate there. But multiple names have actually been put forth in the American press of who could take over the position of National Security Advisor. Nonetheless, I think Tehran is trying to paint most of the administration officials with a broad brush. With National Security Advisor Bolton, they had put him as part of this thing called the B team, Iran's 4 Bs, Bolton, Bibi, bin Salman, bin Zayed, and had claimed this group of people was preventing the administration from engaging in diplomacy. Likely Iran is going to repackage that talking point again, regardless of who is National Security Advisor.
Behnam Ben Taleblu, thanks so much for joining us tonight.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.